Excuse me. What's up, everybody? Getting another live stream in here. I have been trying to get them a little more frequently than we have in the past, or back on schedule, I really should say. Interesting topic today, in my opinion. So, what are some of the worst 6.0 Power Stroke upgrades or mods that I've heard about over the years, or I see people do? It's kind of odd because a lot of them actually stem from really good ideas, or from well executed ones, I should say. Um, for instance, in the background here, I'm going to bring up Amazon and eBay, and two sites I buy a lot of stuff from, don't get me wrong, but we're going to really see what comes up and kind of review some of these um, items that come up. The first one is a knockoff set of ARP head studs. So one of my like I said, we're gonna basically Google some of these products and kind of go through what's popular right now, along with some personal favorites like, you know, budget exhaust manifolds or budget cylinder heads, because those work out really well. And if you guys haven't already, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and get involved in the chat down here. It really helps liven things up for the whole live stream as a whole. So, um, like I said, I think this is probably one of the best initial things that could pop up is a set of knockoff head studs. This is terrible for a multitude of reasons. One, because do you really want to do a $5,000 plus job? I don't know what the going rate is right now, but probably $5,000 at a minimum, and then save what 50% on the cost of an ARP head stud set. You know, ARP head studs are about $450, $500. You can get some of these cheap ones about half that. You really, really want to be skating out on just that little bit. That's not a whole lot of money. Exhaust manifolds are really kind of another one here, guys, that here's high flow exhaust manifolds, 250. Here's that same exact knockoff for 360. BDs, which I think are a quality set, are about $600 these days, 650, somewhere in there. You're not going to save a lot of money in the long haul. You're going to cost yourself a lot more because that part's going to fail or warp. One of the worst, I think, Sinister Diesel sells a set of exhaust headers for the 6.0 that everybody I've seen that has them is complaining about them leaking not terribly long after, and they're crazy money. Looks like RCD has a set as well, although I'm not as familiar with that set. They look a little nicer because they're still a manifold style. They're not a header, which there are differences. Most diesels aren't going to flow enough air or run high enough RPM, I should say, to actually benefit from a header style exhaust manifold setup. Another one that I see here, and again, guys, like as we're going through this, please get in the chat. Let me know your experiences with some of these things. I'm literally just kind of going and seeing what some of these trends are. Because again, a lot of these stem from actually really good ideas, things that are worthwhile in the modification from a modification standpoint. You know, a lot of things that are actually worthwhile to do to your 6.0. Another popular one, blue spring mods. Buy the Ford one, because there just isn't enough quality control on the aftermarket ones to really tell a whole lot of difference on them. So people are running these really cheap $5-6 blue spring mods, and they're either lowering, they're actually coming out with worse pressures than before, or they're coming out with stupid high pressures that are going to ruin a set of injectors. And the whole point of the blue spring mod is to save your injectors in the first place. So obviously more than a little counterproductive. Let's see if we can find a blue spring kit here. And I think the Ford one is like, well, of course, Sinister Diesel had to get in here. The other thing that's happened is these like billet covers have become really, really popular as of late, that do nothing. Spent 2 years at a shop getting fully, ended up getting rid of it. Now I have 2 more. Well, James, welcome to the live stream. And what's been your experience with why'd you get rid of the one that spent so long at the shop, getting all that stuff done to? Here's a good reminder of one. The fuel bolts that go into the cylinder head. I can't think of what they're called right now. I see a picture of them. But so there's this idea that if you replace the 6-liter head fuel bolt that goes into the cylinder head with a 6.4 one, that you like get rid of a restriction. One, most people aren't seeing enough fuel need to benefit from that, so it's wasted money. It's fortunately not a super expensive mod. The other thing is, after that, they really like, there's no point unless you have a fully upgraded fuel system. So if you're going to do a fully regulated return, which is a video in the future we'll be doing on the channel on my 6-liter, is a full regulated return setup on it. If you're not going to do that, there really isn't any point in trying to do this. Now, most of those fuel kits do come with, that's right. So there's a check valve in the 6.0 one. But most people just aren't seeing enough. My personal 6-liter still is running the 6-liter bolts there. Maybe at some point before I do the full fuel system upgrade, I'll see if I can tell any difference in fuel economy or not by switching out. It doesn't hurt anything, and they're not super expensive to get. It's just kind of, unless you're upgrading a whole lot, then it's not going to help. And most of the fully regulated returns are going to come with that bolt anyway, along with one at the rear of the head as well. Like I said, a lot of these come from really good. What's up, Sean? I didn't see you there. How you doing, man? How you doing, brother? So it's just kind of like wasted money. It's a lot like these fancy billet housings that go over the fuel pressure regulator. Like, they're kind of pointless. There are some with a regulator in there, and I have not personally messed with it. So here's one from Swag for $50. I like the idea behind it, but my understanding is I've heard people say they leak. So I like the idea in theory, but I don't know that it's actually been super helpful to a lot of people. So I would be cautious anybody going after some of those, which is tough. So it is important to make sure, like I said, you're buying. So here's a fully Ford one. $100 seems expensive for the Ford one. I feel like I paid $30. So, but anyway, regardless, you want to make sure you're putting in the right blue spring. Are there people that got the cheaper kits and it worked perfectly? Yes, but there's a lot of people that got the cheaper kits and sent their fuel pressure in crazy numbers, either lower or too high for what those injectors are made to work with. So just keep that in mind as you're working through some of that, and feel free, guys, to get in the chat and throw out some modifications that you're curious about, if they're helpful or not. Or if there's like I said, a lot of these are good upgrades, just there's a lot of bad follow through, or the value of buying a fancy part, like the fancy housing, isn't really worth it, in my opinion, which takes me to, let's pick on Amazon a little bit and let's see what 6.0 Powerstroke upgrades they have over here. Replacement parts. There's a Sinister thing, an air intake. So it's one of the cheaper air intakes, which I don't hate at all. My peeve with the cheaper intake is actually that it's the filter. The filters are trash. Get rid of it. Air intakes are not super complex things, guys. So I'm all for them. Many of you guys know I'm a big believer in aftermarket intakes, but you want to get a quality filter like an AFE and S&B. Both make fantastic filters. That's who you should be putting on there. There's some other companies out there I recommend, like Power Driven Diesel has their own filter now. They do really good stuff as well. So I'd be all for some of that. And what's up, Pat? How you doing, man? Ward, what's up? So bulletproof diesel EGR cooler versus EGR delete. So I want to I want to preface this with a couple things, guys. And this is really just to keep myself out of trouble. We're going to hypothetically say this is an offered scenario. Um, the RPM Act passed, which is a racing act. That did not actually happen, but hypothetically, say that does, and we can have this conversation about diesels. So, um, here's a misconception: people think EGRs are robbing um, power and efficiency, and they're not. An EGR cooler valve, I should say, doesn't actually stay open all that long. It's actually, for the most part, closed a lot of the time. Under moderate to high use, that valve is not opening up. It's really under low throttle responses and idle conditions that your valve actually runs more, which is why on newer diesels, starting when they got the EGR coolers, they recommended against idling as much, whereas older diesels, everybody tended to idle. I think a lot of people still idle newer ones, but there is no power gain or loss per se, like max power. Like if you're doing a full throttle pull, like your EGR is going to be shut anyway. Um, here's what's also become tough is because that the EPA has really attacked this kind of segment. There's not a lot of great EGR deletes out there anymore. They've all become very hard to get your hands on. So, in my opinion, I see nothing wrong with a bulletproof diesel EGR cooler. It is sturdy, it's reliable, it's going to get the job done. You're not going to have headaches with a lot of these other, it's not going to leak like a lot of these cheap EGR deletes that people are running were all leaking. So, do I hope that in the future the RPM Act passes, and at least in the sense of off-road racing diesels, we can get this back? Absolutely. That is a one, but at this time, that's not the case, unfortunately. Um, yeah, Sinister EGR deletes were garbage. I'm not a fan of Sinister Diesel as a whole. As many of you guys know, I get a little annoyed with them. Uh, Sean, I agree. So coolant filters are kind of a joke. Actually, what's funny is I made that comment in a video recently. There's my pup, and I got kind of slammed over that. People did not like that. I want to be clear. It's not that I don't think they do anything. I think they do very little. And I think a lot of people want them to band-aid lack of maintenance on your cooling system. So the coolant filter itself, I am not a big fan of. If there was one I would say to run, it would be the IPR one. They make a one that really filters a ton of coolant with a bypass valve, so that if you actually get one that's clogged up, it still will flow coolant. You're not going to hurt anything. That is the only one I can honestly say I recommend. And again, I don't. It's not that I don't think they do anything, but I think you get people that don't ever change their filters, so their filters, ancient, and they're hoping it still does stuff. Meanwhile, you have a filter that's probably falling apart from so long, and it's not going to stop when coolant essentially gels up when the silicates fall out of suspension. So, um, I don't hate them. I just don't love them. I say that as somebody that's running one on his truck. Oil cooler is the best coolant filter. That's pretty funny. That's really funny. Yeah, truthfully, that that's one of my favorite jokes I've ever heard about Ford, is that the oil cooler is the best coolant filter. And quite frankly, yes, it is probably the best coolant filter because it sees all of the coolant. Um, There have been people that have tried changing the design of the oil cooler to make it less susceptible to this. So some people have bigger passages in them, which, yes, does lead to them not getting um, clogged as quickly. However, then you lose efficiency in cooling the or the oil, so that's not good either. So there's kind of a catch 22. I personally only recommend running OEM Ford oil coolers and making sure you're doing regular maintenance. If you have a coolant filter, like Pat said down here, he changes his filter regularly. Honestly, honestly, even if you do it once a year, I think that's fine. If you change it once a year, like you plan, hey, I'm going to do a big maintenance job on my truck in January, and some of the things you might not mess with as often, that's when you do it. I think you'd probably be fine. But there's people that have that oil cooler or coolant filter on there, and it's literally 5 years old. Let's see here. What other nonsense is there? Here's the ultra high flow upgraded fuel kit with those fuel bolts again. Um, Here's a controversial one. This didn't pop up, but I just thought about this. 58-volt Ficums, I think, are dumb. 54-volt Ficums, I think, are dumb. Yes, they do help with cold starts, sure, but also a properly functioning system helps with cold starts too. So I just dislike this design. The system is designed around 48 volts. So yes, throwing a little extra voltage at it is fine in the scheme of things, but at the same time, like, you can wear stuff out faster. I just don't like the idea. I'm not saying I have anything to say that's actually happened, but a lot of people upgrade these trucks. They drive them a handful of times a year. They take it on one trip, and then they're like, well, this is clearly proven. Daily drive that truck and talk to me. So I always recommend people get good, reliable Ficums from like Ed's Ficum Repair. Don't waste your money on 58, 54-volt Ficums. That's stupid. Um, if your truck is running correctly, you won't have cold start issues. If you have a good, strong starter, you have good, strong batteries, um, a wire upgrade, like the big three, your negatives and power wires are very helpful. That's how you make sure your injectors are healthy. You're changing your oil regularly. The 58-volt Ficum needs to go away. That's where I stand on that. There are some cheap alternatives to people that have failed Ficums now that aren't super costly like they used to be. It used to be you were stuck spending a ton of money, but there are some budget ones that actually, for Josh's ran a cheap like $75 replacement Ficum main power in his for 5 years now, no issue. So I wouldn't personally recommend wasting the money on anything more. Although I will say, big fan of Ed's Ficum repair, and that's, if mine went, that's where I would be going personally. I'd like to know the best 6-point diagrams to use, read pressures, voltage, etc., clear codes for the best price. So, David, that's an awesome question. I'm glad you asked it. So I actually have a couple recommendations in this department. And also, guys, different camera setup tonight. So let me know what you think of that. The audio setup is still the same, but I'm trying a different camera. My mom's computer needs a camera, so I got another one. Figured I'd just test it to see which one I like. So let me know if it's good or better, or the same or better. Anyway, moving on. So the Forescan tool has a website. I'm going to get a link. Forescan. This is a great, really powerful tool. You can hook this up to your laptop and actually run like literally all but Ford IDS level software on your truck. I am in the process of getting a video together on this. This is hands down the most inexpensive, effective tool for diagnostic. It will read every module in your truck. There's It's actually free. You can keep renewing a 2-month setup for it, or you can buy the actual like a lifetime. I'm looking for you can get there's a free extended license that's a 2 months trial. By 1 year extended license, I was pretty certain there was like a lifetime um, as well. I'd have to look into that a little bit, but I mean, it's well worth it. It's pretty affordable. Um, if you wanted to do something a little easier to use on your phone, I do believe Forescan still has a type of app you can load up. I have an old version of the app, but I can still use it. And then there's also Torque Pro for Android devices, which is just a fantastic, super easy thing to use. Those are my two favorites. And I will say this, I run a cheap OBD2 Bluetooth for this. For Forescan, because you can do a lot of stuff on Forescan, I would not recommend using super cheap setups for that. So I'm looking up one here. There's a $60, let's see, OBD Link X. Let me get you guys a link. And this will basically connect to your laptop and allow you some really this will allow you the ability to hold on, making sure. Okay. I thought one of you guys was maybe messaging me and it's not. But anyway, so this will just work really well with your. Oh, I'm not signed in. With your laptop, making sure the signal gets where it's supposed to go and that you're able to do everything you can, because certain features on lower quality OBD2 devices will be turned off. So you don't want that. This is an affiliate link coming, just as a heads up, but this is the one I'm going to purchase and do a review with. You can have the cheaper one for like your phone. It works really well, but in the scheme of things, this is what I recommend. It is, I mean, it is literally all but Ford level, like Ford IDS level scan software, and it's absolutely amazing. The only real feature it lacks, which isn't a huge deal on 6 liters, but is basically an injector test. You know, it can turn off each cylinder and test it that way, but it can't like show you an actual graph of it. Um, excuse me. So that is something to keep in mind. But um, Torque Pro, if you need to buy the Pro version, it's $5. You can get a cheap OBD2 Bluetooth adapter. I'll link that below. And let's see here. Here we go. This is what I use. This is $8, so about $12, $13. You're able to read a lot of what you just asked about. Again, that is an affiliate link. It will really, these are really powerful tools, honestly. And even down the road, like for my 6.7, I'm going to do some videos unlocking certain features like remote start. You can program keys with the Forescan. Torque Pro is just a monitoring setup. Now, I will say this, if you want something that's just a dedicated monitor in your truck, in my opinion, the CTS is the only real option here for like a quality monitor. I have an older version of it, the CTS2, and like 6 months later, the CTS3 came out. That was kind of annoying. Oh, this is funny. Here's a refurbished one. That also kind of looks like a knockoff, so we won't be sending that. 416. They've gone up in price a little bit, but only about $20. if you want a dedicated one, in my opinion, the Edge CTS is the absolute best for that. Let's see here. I had a problem with the Dorman replacement boards. Never had one fail. You had no problem with the Dorman ones. Yeah, I heard good things about the Dorman ones. Have always had a spare behind the seat. Did you ever knee it? I've never used mine yet, but I've had more injector problems than Fickum problems. You have 04 just over 112. After 19 years, finally let me down. Blew out the back of the high pressure pump. And I just replaced the turbo with a brand new Garrett, but I want a good scan device. With your 03, do you have, or 04, excuse me, do you have an 03 style pump, or do you have the 04 and later style pump on your truck? I have an 04, but it's an early 04. It's a full 03 engine. My brother has a late 04, and it has all the later upgrades that happened in 04. Yeah, those devices are quite good. They'll really do the trick. Yes, Pat, you have IDS. I actually really want IDS. Pat, I hope it's your internet and not mine. Although so far everything seems pretty smooth on the setup. Round aluminum. Yeah. There's been a lot of upgrades to that over the years. So besides just the billet housing ones, they actually have some revisions to the stock housing as well that are make it much more reliable than the older ones. They're only rated, I think, for 150 to 200,000 miles. They do tend to go further than that. The backplate wear out issue on them is pretty predominant, especially on the earlier years. That's always a big hassle when that happens. So that sucks. It did happen, but at least you know you're sitting good now with a lot of the updated stuff that's gone into that pump. So you shouldn't have that issue again. Still really stinks to see how much is Ford IDS. It's not cheap. They should make it cheaper. And I think you have to actually recommended laptops. I don't care. My laptop will do fine. It doesn't really say. I see Ford IDS going for between $400 and $800 and $900. It would be really okay. Oh, and that's a yearly thing. There's a 30-day $300, a 2-day license for $150, 1 year for $850. Whew. For the little bit that you get for it, it's not worth it. Pat, what did you do you renew it every year? How does that work with the Ford IDS stuff? I have a hard time recommending IDS to backyard mechanics like myself or a lot of my subscribers because I don't think you get enough value for it. Nothing against the Ford IDS software. Trust me, if I had more money, I would have it. But I'm just not sure. Oh, nope. I'm trying to see if it comes up anywhere else. Typing in Ford IDS doesn't really get you anywhere either. Regardless. Oh, Pat, that'll be nice. I have my focus on my camera just went out. If that's not apparent. Let's pull up the camera app and see if we can't take over focus. Well, that's unfortunate. I cannot take over the focus of my camera. Anyway, well, I'm going to keep talking while we deal with this. Yeah, no, I have Cat 6 line running to my PC, and I absolutely love it because my internet's so much more stable than it used to be. I still have issues every now and then, but it's not too bad. Still trying to find my camera stuff here to see if I can't change my focus. But it will not let me. Let's try just resetting. Oh, that didn't do anything. Well, I think it's safe to say that this is not the camera to continue to use. It can't autofocus a little bit better than that. Trying to see if I can't. Camera settings. Anyway, we're going to keep going even if it is a little blurry. Sorry, guys. I'm not sure how to get it to stop that. I'm going to mess with it. One more idea here. Nope. No clear. So, anywho, Cat 6 internet through your house should work a lot better and keep things going a little smoother. Oh, hey, it refocused. Look at that. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway, 6.0 oil additives like arch oil. So I'm a big fan of arch oil, guys. Excuse me. Many of you guys know this as we've talked through the years. I do think a couple things here. So I think part of why something like arch oil is so successful is I think oil additives have been bad due to certain regulations that oil manufacturers have had to do. Certain things have, come out of oils. There's a few that still talk about it, but arch oil as a whole, in my opinion, on a Powerstroke, you really can't go wrong. And I do think it also will lead to helping things wear out, like reduce wear. Zinc is, I do believe it's zinc. Let me see here. I think it's the zinc, if I remember right, in there. That is a big part of what helps, and it helps kind of like embed into the. Looking for where it is. Zinc has been proven to really help reduce wear on vehicles, and that's part of what it is. So like Greg, when he did my whole build on the truck, he put a zinc additive in there to help kind of reduce wear and help things wear in right. So what I can tell you is it has helped me reduce wear on the 6-liter when I had it I had a sticking injector. When I put it in, it did help for the first like 3,000 miles of an oil change. And then as it became, as this stuff wears out itself, it became less helpful. Then it kind of came back and was an issue again. So while it won't fix everything, I do think it will help prevent certain issues. Does that mean you can go 10,000 miles without changing your oil? No, you still need to keep to the 5,000 mile oil intervals. And a lot of people think you have to be perfect with that. You don't. You need to be good about it. But if you go 51, 5,200 miles here and there, it's not going to destroy your engine. It's not like 5,000 miles hits and the oil shot. it's the people always pushing it to 7,000 miles and then doing an oil change. Those are the guys that need to kind of knock it off a little bit and stick back, get back on track with better oil changes. They will have issues. So those are just some things. I like it. Is it RevX is the other popular one, I believe. And here's what I'll say about that. I personally like Arch Oil a little bit better. However, RevX, by many people I've spoken to, people I really trust at that, have all had really good experiences with it. The one thing is RevX seems to take longer to work. It is a super good oil additive. Arch Oil seems to have a little bit more of an immediate fix to some of the 6-liter issues, whereas the RevX seems to take longer. But in hindsight, it also, from what people have told me, it seems to last longer. And these are people I respect that have plenty of experience. This isn't just me kind of making those things up. I have spoken to people running it. So it isn't as immediate, but it does make a difference, and it does kind of seem to last a little longer. I think as long as you're using one of these additives, here's the Revet's zinc and phosphorus. So, kind of what we were just talking about a little bit ago. There's also fuel treatments as well. I like to use, again, I've used the Arch Oil one. They have a diesel treatment that I've used. They were on a new set of injectors, so I can't say if they helped or not, but I do think these are habits that are good all in all for making sure that things are, going to live the longest, healthiest life they can. So that's kind of my oil additive / fuel additive stance. Some fuel additives apparently are alcohol based. I only learned this due to kind of some stuff on 6.7. So the one thing I will say, make sure you're using a diesel specific treatment and make sure it is actually meant to be used for that it doesn't have an alcohol in it. That would be the opposite of what we want in our diesel fuel. So this helped lead to the death of more than 1 or 2 CP4 pumps out there. But yeah, both are excellent products. The one thing they don't do that a lot of people think they do is they think they will eliminate water. They do not get rid of water in the diesel. So that is I can't remember. See if I can find the one that I'm a fan of. Power Service makes nice stuff. I like their Diesel 911. For those of you guys that don't know, that's for gelling. It's not even a bad habit to toss a little into, in the winter. I always keep some in the house just in case if your diesel fuel gels up. You put some of that in, it will help. I normally pour a little in with each fill during the winter time. Like if I know it's going to get cold coming up, if they're calling for single digits, I will almost always go put a little bit in my fuel tank just to kind of reduce the risk. Maybe drive around the block then and help mix it all up and then call it a day. So, but those are kind of the bulk of what I like. But understand you need an actual water remover if that's your goal, if that's what you're trying to do. Which is what I would recommend if you're going to let diesel sit for any length of time. Use something that will get rid of the water. That's very important. I think I missed a few things here. Sorry. Oh, is it? I think it's caused by when I lean in is why we got out of focus there. I don't know. I like, just to talk about picture quality, I like the picture quality. I feel like it's less busy in the background than the other camera. Not by much. But at the same time, this focus feature I'm not loving. I do like that I have a little privacy flap. I can just pop that right down, and I like that. So anyway, where was I? ZDDP is the big anti-wear additive. Gas vehicles and arch on the 6.0. There is a ZDDP from Rev X that is marketed for diesels, I believe. I just saw that a little bit ago. Something to consider there. Hotshot works if you have cold start issues, but is fine when hot. Had the hotshot clean the spool valves on the injectors. Also running customers' trucks as printed. It's a do you own a shop or do you work in a shop? I didn't know that. Arch Oil does advertise for 6.0s and 7.3s. It does not say. I wasn't sure if you could. Is the oil additive an issue in the 6.7s? What's up with that? Because yeah, it really does say just 7.3s and 6.0s. What if I want to run it in my 6.7? Can you use arch oil in the fuel? Okay. I didn't know that. That's cool, man. I'm going nowhere if it's single digits. I'm going nowhere if it's single digits. Because you don't want to, or because your truck won't let you? Because those are two different issues. Uh, been running power service since new, still original injectors. Yeah, power service stuff is good. They have really high quality stuff. I'm a big fan of them. I would definitely use. Like I said, I keep the Diesel 911 in the wintertime. Oh yeah, so you don't know what single digits weather is too often down there. Um, what's one of the Jared from Kill Devil Diesel? The one year I was talking to him, there was a snowstorm in North Carolina, so his shop is in Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, and he said he goes it shut the town down. But currently 6.0 here, currently 9,000 deep, and got the truck in March. Ozzy, is that for $9,000 like truck purchase? And like, have you had to do stuff to it? What's going on with your truck? Because it kind of sounds like something bad has happened, but I'm not sure. So, is it you spent $9,000 to get it, or what's going on there? A lot of great people here in the chat. Myself, happy to help, kind of lend a hand or idea. Make sure no one's trying to bamboozle you, if you will. One of my favorite Big Bang Theory jokes. Give them a call, David. Who do you want me to call? If it's Kill Devil, it's a little late to be giving him a call. I haven't talked to him in a while. Oh, that's funny. You got the full 6.0 experience. Oh yeah, it was an experience back when it all happened. It really is a shame if there was a better understanding of how the 6 liter worked. It should have never been as painful as for the end consumer and fleet owners as it was, if they understood how it was working a lot better. It really is a pain. It's upsetting because here we are, how many years later, and it's still considered to be this horrific thing, um, and it truthfully really isn't. Uh, Oil cooler seals, EGR gasket, head gaskets, drive shaft, multiple new boots. Paid 13 for truck, it's bulletproof, but they plugged the EGR instead of taking it out. Um, so Ozzy, I do tend to be very leery on talking too much about deletes to keep myself out of trouble. What I will say is isn't really anything wrong with a plugged EGR cooler. It'll be perfectly fine. It's super affordable, and part of the issue is there aren't really a lot of good there aren't really successful deletes out there. So having it still in there will prevent it from leaking coolant on you in 500 miles, like a lot of these cheap deletes end up doing to people. So that's not a big deal in my book. It sounds like you bought a truck that really needed a lot of work. When you say multiple new boots, do you mean boots for your intercooler pipes? Which will send me on my next tangent here of so if people have over torqued the factory tube too much, what can happen is you can actually ruin that and have a ridiculously hard time keeping an intercooler boot on there. It will blow off a lot. So what I do recommend to people is I'm a big believer in high quality intercooler boots, but it will boots and pipes. But what I will say, in a pinch, some of these cheap kits, I'm going to put a link. Can be decent. They are. I do want to really, really emphasize here. These are not my favorite. I do not overly like these, but from just this is funny. This one just has two pictures of a cold side pipe. But yeah, we'll shy away from that. Where's just a normal polished one? Because all these painted ones are garbage. Um, so the point of me bringing this up is yes, it is unfortunate, but at the end of the day, like getting a nice set of boots and pipes, like because even these cheap ones, while they're not the greatest, they do the job just fine. Like this kit here, I'm gonna send you this. These boots, like this setup as a whole, this is an affiliate link. That setup as a whole should rectify your issue, and quite frankly, will probably be perfectly fine. You shouldn't have anything to worry about with that. Um, so, and then you get new clamps, new pipes. Sure, are they going to be the prettiest welds in the world? No, they won't. But you'll get a rolled bead at the end to help hold those on there, and you'll be good to go. Let's see here. New 6.0 owner as well. 05, 91. Man, you guys are finding super low mileage 6 liters still. That's wild. 91,000 miles. No blow by, old fisherman from Cali truck. So far, I've bought new Bilsteins, rear installed front to be installed tomorrow. Nice, man. Man, dude, that sounds like a nice build you have going with that. Nice and easy, nothing too wild. I like it. Oh, call them to see if I can use the arch oil. Yeah. No, I would like to find that out. I like why you can't, because if it's just anti-wear stuff, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I imagine there's a good reason it's only advertised for the 7.3 and 6.0. And there's other additives I can use in the 6.7, so no big deal. Let's see here. You have 6-stage Baja on the fly tunes and stage 2 KC. It's fast, but I have to keep a can of hairspray and wrench in my truck. Yeah, man. So it sounds like your pipes are messed up. And I think you would really benefit from um a new set of pipes. So those are a budget set. If you're saying, "Hey, I'm not trying to keep dumping money in." If you're talking about, "Hey, I want some nice stuff," then I'm going to throw out my turbo sponsor here who has uh they work with SoCal Billet on some of, well, I should say they're a dealer for SoCal Billet, not that they like personally work with them. Um but their piping kit is the absolute best. Um I am affiliated with this company, not SoCal Billet, but Turbo Time USA. That is who I would use. I doubt my discount works for them, but 6.0 Bros for a lot of things does work. I'll type that out. That is my affiliate code. I don't think it'll work with that product, but if it does, there you go. Check it out. Um, yeah, that is, in my opinion, the nicest piping kit on the market. You're going to get super high quality boots, good clamps. Make sure to look up what is an appropriate torque spec on clamps to be running, and you'll be good to go. The other thing I see, Pat brought it up down here. If you're certain your OEM pipes are good, Riff Raff Diesel, who I'm not affiliated with, but they have super nice stuff. I would get a full piping kit or not piping kit, a full boot kit and clamps from those guys. It is a little bit of money, but man, you're gonna have a hard time finding a better setup. I wonder if they have a SoCal Billet set. Yeah, they do. I would say these are probably every bit as good as well. So another thing to consider. Again, this is my turbo sponsor selling SoCal Billet stuff. Um, I do really like that. So the problem is, Pat has the factory torque spec down here. A lot of times people crank them down further, or the boot wears out, so they think, well, I'll get by if I just kind of, once that factory, because what happens is they have like a reverse bead on the factory pipe. So instead of a raised edge, they have an indented one. On the factory pipe or boot, there's a lip inside there that's meant to sit in there. And that's why Ford has the lines on the boot to actually where to torque it down. So you put your clamp right over that and it torques that boot, like that notch in the boot, into that groove more. That's what actually holds it in place. A lot of people don't know that. And that's caused a lot of people headaches, or people are buying other boots in an attempt to not have to deal with that. So um, but those are the best options, and that'll really get things squared away for you. Uh, with Ford cooler boots, when I replace them, also use some strong hairspray. Tacky. Yeah, man. If, in my opinion, this is, I get frustrated at this. If you're set up, like if things are how they're supposed to be, you should never need to use hairspray on your cac tubes ever. I know there's a lot of people that say they do it all the time. Something's wrong, if that's what they're doing, and I refuse to believe that hairspray is going to be enough to not let you lose boost. They might stay on there better, but you're going to still lose boost. Boost is going to escape. Uh, so I've heard people say scuff up the pipe with sandpaper. You shouldn't have to do any of that. Like if the clamp is there, I did a whole video on installing these and how to do it correctly, because this is such a frustrating standpoint. I see a lot of people throwing out there, these ideas, when realistically they have a bad pipe that needs to go, and then they'll be so much happier. Like I said, even these cheap piping kits are going to do a better job than a messed up factory kit that just isn't going to hold anymore. So don't waste your time trying to make something work that isn't going to work. Um, I will say this: I would lean towards the SoCal Billet stuff. No Limit is another great company. Their pipes are very similar, but slightly more expensive, so I don't necessarily recommend them for that. An extra $100 for the set isn't really worth it, in my opinion. Excuse me. But, option is out there. What should you install next? Bigger injectors or a faster fuel pump? Um, well, it depends on a couple things. What size injector do you want to go? So, Ozzy, like, do you have a horsepower goal in mind? Because I mean, I can tell you what'll pair well with a KC Stage 2. Um, as far as like what my recommendation is, but if you're in a point where you need something like else as a whole, then let's look at it now as opposed to go ahead and get you set up only for you to need a change in the future. For the KC Stage 2 Turbo, like I said, while we're waiting, I would definitely recommend for injectors, I'd recommend a 205/30 or a 175 stock. Those are the two upgrades I recommend for most people. A 175 stock nozzle performs really well. You'll max out about 520-ish horsepower on an injector like that, which is still a lot of fun to drive. Whereas a 205/30, you're going to be more around the 600 mark. A 205/30 could even actually go to a slightly bigger turbo if you wanted. So you could actually go to maybe like their stage, a stage 3 turbo would actually work quite nicely with that. I know they've kind of changed a lot of their stuff around recently, so I quick popped on to see what all they have going on their website these days, so I can give you accurate. Oh, they brought back the ball bearing setup again. I did know that, actually, now that I think about it. This is actually a turbo I wouldn't mind trying. I know I'm sponsored by a turbo company, and I'm very loyal to them. I like those guys. But the ball bearing setup is pretty cool. I'm kind of surprised they're saying up to a 190/30. I thought they'd actually say a little bit more, to be honest. Now, I will say this: a 205/30 is going to be a pretty, like on a full race tune, that's going to be a little on the smoky side. I've definitely boosted into the 30s, which I know isn't crazy high, like 35 psi of boost, and I've never popped one since getting like a nice setup. Both fuel pressure and degas throttle pressure both can hint there's a problem before it gets stranded. That's not bad advice. I do fuel pressure. Well, I have to hook it back up. I've considered doing coolant pressure, although I've never, excuse me, although I've never actually set a gauge up for that. Ford installed aluminum pipes on my 04 since new, no issues with my pipes. So, David, let me ask this. When you say Ford installed 04, like since new, like back in 2004 when it sold, you had new aluminum, new metal pipes, because the Ford ones are actually a mild steel, which is a great material. Don't get me wrong, but they're a mild steel from factory, and what can happen is if they're torqued down too much, that crimp in there to kind of help hold it, like they can. I've seen it more than once where the pipe was actually bad. Not saying that's the case. I'm just saying I've seen it a lot more than you would anticipate. And a lot of times, even Ford techs working on these are the ones that are guilty of not taking the time to torque that pipe down correctly and are causing their own issue. I don't see it as much on the pipes that have like the raised edge, like a bead like rolled into it. I think partially because that bead sticks up. So when you tighten your clamp down, so if you have something sitting as high as my fingertips and you clamp down right under here, it's going to take a lot more force to pop that boot off. So I wouldn't be so sold if they're still the original pipes, and especially with a mechanic in there recently tightening the crap out of them. That could be your issue. Now, if you really do want to try to save them and make sure, I would get the boots I listed, either the SoCal Billet ones from my sponsor, or go to Riff Raff Diesel, and I would get new boots and I would get all brand new clamps, and I would go from there and see if you can't make that work. Oh wait, I think I might have you guys mixed up on who has the issue. Is it Ozzy that has the issue? Yes, Ozzy has the issue, not David. My bad, man. 3D gas sensors plus. I used a dual display digital gauge in the A-pillar pod and then scan gauge for. You guys are just showing off here with your monitoring, okay? For us peasants with our one monitor. As for, was it Ozzy looking for running 40s, making a little over 5, still slower than I prefer. Ozzy, what injectors are in your truck now? Because 580 horsepower would be like realistically a 205/30 with your turbo. Would be about the max that would be about the max a stage 2 turbo would really be capable of hitting. Now, I mean, you can hit into the into the 600s, don't get me wrong, but it is the higher end of things. So like 580 horsepower is like literally your truck running as fast as like a 2016 Mustang from the factory. David, that's awesome they did that, because a lot of times they won't. They won't keep the metal pipes in there. They'll upgrade you to the plastic cold side pipe, and yeah, that's a big pain in the butt. But it's guaranteed return business, I guess. But yeah, no, so I just like I said, I'm trying to figure out what turbo you have, because it would be really interesting to see. That's a lot of 580 horsepower. I'm just curious where that came from, because 580 is a pretty fast truck. I'm on 35 12.5 tires, making about 520, and I can honestly say, while I want more, at no point was I like, holy crap, this is slow. Now, I will say, if you are still running the factory pump, and you already have injectors in there, I would definitely be looking at a fast fuel pump and a regulated return, because any bigger to get more horsepower than 580, if you're already upgraded, then you're really going to need to have a regulated return. You're going to need to have you're going to really need to have that fast fuel pump to push enough fuel to feed injectors that big. If you're looking for more than 580 horsepower, which again is about a 205/30, 190/30 at a minimum, to be in that setup, you're gonna 8-inch lift, long bed, 190 cc. Okay, so you really do already have a pretty souped up truck. I didn't realize that. How's that thing brake? Because you might need a braking upgrade before you need to upgrade more. So in your case, man, I really think you kind of have a twofold issue. I think you need to probably highly consider um sorry, I'm getting updates for stuff. I'm just double checking everything. Um for your setup, man, you're gonna probably need a bigger turbo. Because if you're really like looking for a lot more, like you're not gonna get a whole lot more from a 205 30 or 205 75 maybe. Which once you start, obviously towing is not a major concern for you with your setup being 8-inch lifted. So if we were gonna stay in the KC family of turbos, I would say you'd want to look at it at his stage 3 turbo. Um, I'm going to pull up my turbo sponsor here. So from my turbo sponsor, the options are, oh, they did add those colors. I do love that. I was there when they made those. So also, are you set on sticking with a VGT turbo? Because I really think if you're looking for much more with your setup, you're probably going to be better suited going to a non VGT setup. I just think you're probably kind of at the limit. Like, so you could go to a stage 3 turbo. You could do the GXR7 turbo from my sponsor Turbo Time, which I can get you 10% off. But I think you'd probably be better, better supported with a non VGT setup overall, because you're kind of at the point where um, for a 6 liter that VGTs are kind of wearing out. You can get closer to 700, so I don't want to say that you have no options, just that you're kind of on the verge of pushing it per se. So let's look at some non-VGT setups because they are different. The 369 is a pretty popular setup. I'd have to get you some injector ideas. That's a little bit harder to kind of figure out, but I'm happy to help you with it. But you are kind of starting and enter the part where I've talked a lot. So Ozzy, what I'm gonna say is I love VGT turbos. So I'm a fan of sticking with them. You're gonna max out around the 650-ish horsepower mark. I'm not saying you can't make a little more with it, but just that is about the highest you can get. I think some people have hit 700 or close to it. But those tend to be smoky trucks. So I would say your kind of first setups would be, either going to KC's stage 3 turbo or Turbo Time USA GXR7 turbo would be your two VGT options to consider, in my opinion. There are some differences here. So KC has a larger exhaust wheel. They go to, I forget which one, it's the GT40 wheel, I believe. And they go to a 68 millimeter compressor wheel. My sponsor Turbo Time, I plan to kind of test this a little more on the GXR7 with my future injector upgrade of 205/30s to really see what that puts down. But they still stick with a 10 blade. They do offer a 9 blade. I'm not a big fan of it. They do offer one thing my sponsor does is they do offer a thicker turbine shaft that they sell, where the shaft of it is thicker in order to prevent damage to it. Um, so, Ozzy, you probably need a re-gear with your tire size. So it's a thicker shaft. They do the heat treating in house as well. Um, there's still the 10 blade that's common. There is the 9 blade as well, which might give you a little more of the top end that it seems like you might be looking for, but you will lose bottom end on that setup. Uh, so I don't know that I personally recommend the 9 blade for you. Do you still have the factory gears on your truck, Ozzy? PSI. Um, there are ball bearing VGT turbos. So the only factory produced ball bearing is from Ford right now, to my knowledge. That is a ball bearing VGT turbo. My sponsor does produce them as well for the 6.7, all built off the factory Garrett. For 6 liters, the only ball bearing turbos I'm aware of are currently being sold by KC Turbo. Now, they did recently re release this 5-ish years ago. They had this. My understanding, and I could be wrong, so please do not hold me to this, was that there were issues. They took it off the market. I imagine made everything correct with people that had them and experienced any issues. From everything I've ever seen, Casey's customer service is normally top notch, even when things aren't their fault, like when people are replacing turbos without doing their due diligence prior. So, but they're the only ones making ball bearing turbos for the 6 liter, to my knowledge. I don't know how good they are. I don't know if there's, obviously from their standpoint, they're going to say they should, it's a better turbo. And I mean, I think it's like double the price. So it better be a good turbo. Um, but I personally have not run one. I would love to. I would love to run either their stage two, they call it their S2R dual ball bearing turbo. Or even once I do my injectors, I could support their stage 3 ball bearing turbo. Um, those two turbos are $2,500 and almost $2,800 respectively, whereas their standard where is their standard stage 3? Here it is. Standard stage 3's 1990, so 2 grand, and the standard stage 2 is 1800. So there was a little rounding. It's like 1790. But yeah, so there are ball bearing VGTs out there. I would be hesitant to buy one only because they're relatively new back to the market from what I've seen. Um, I don't know what testing they've done. I imagine there's been a lot of testing. So, but I'm just not familiar with it. I would love to review one. Even though I have a turbo sponsor, I also review parts. The hard part is I'm not spending $2,500 to $2,700 for a turbo to review it. That's just not happening. I would love to at some point. Honestly, I would love if they would be like, "Hey, why don't you do a review of it, then do a giveaway?" I think that'd be awesome. Uh, however, to do a giveaway with them, that'd be pretty cool. Setup down the road, but I doubt they'll do that. I don't think they like me much. They've never said anything to me, so I have nothing to back that up. Just I support a main competitor of theirs. Ozzy, I do think what is a likely issue for you is you probably need to re-gear. So how big of a tire are you running? I saw you have your 8 inches lifted, and I believe you said you have pretty big wheels. So I imagine you're running a pretty big tire as well. And before you go spend the money to do those upgrades, if you're running like a 40-inch tire or 38s, you know, you might want to consider re-gearing. Let's see what gear options you have. You know, if you could get, so here's a 456, you know, and if you're that big, I would probably really consider switching. If this kit would fit, switching your gear ratio to something like that. Like I'm running 35s. I want to switch to, I think it was it 410s? I can't remember. 40-inch Nitto. So, yeah, man, if you're still running the factory, well, also answer this. Are you running factory gears in your truck? Because if you're running factory gears in your truck, man, you're going to tell a lot just from re-gearing it. And it'll also take a lot of that load off your transmission. Lifts, big tires are tough on transmissions. You're making a fair amount of power, you know, at, you know, all but shy of 600 horsepower on your setup. That re-gearing would be quite helpful in making the truck feel lighter on its feet. It can change driving characteristics pretty drastically. Dude, your dually was quite the looker, man, back in the day. I loved that truck. I'm still glad I got to see that. So, yeah, I would be looking at trying to get it back similar to, you know, I would go to at least a 430, if not you know, I think it was 456s. There was a guy back in the day that had a pretty wild setup on his. I'm trying to find him quick. On powerstroke.org. And he had this really killer setup that had, I can't find it. Anyway, he had big tires and a big lift and was towing, and I think he had like 456s in there. You know, you definitely want to, before you go down the route of adding additional power to your setup, I would at least optimize your setup. So, because you figure, you know, going to a bigger set of injectors is going to cost you probably $2,000+. You know, going to another turbo, you're going to be around, you know, 16 to $2,000. Yeah, I will say this, if you go with my sponsor, they do give a 10% affiliate code, so you get 10% off using that code I just sent, 6.0 Bros at Turbo Time USA on their performance turbos. So, you know, there is that. But in the meantime, before you go spend turbo money, before you spend fuel system and injector money, what I would really do is I would re-gear your truck. Now, what I would probably do is, if you're not going to use four-wheel drive anytime soon, I would just do one axle in case you really hate it. But to use your four-wheel drive, both axles need to be upgraded. You're probably talking, if you're not able to do that yourself, you're probably talking about $2,000 an axle, give or take. Don't hold me to that number, but that would be a big part for your truck, man. And then from there, once everything's optimized, then I think you can kind of take the moment to, yeah. Sorry. When I logged into Amazon, I got noticed. I was just trying to get caught up on what all's been happening on my phone here. So yeah, anyway, I think that before you do that, my recommendation would be to go get all that taken care of. Make sure that your truck is optimized for your setup, because gear ratios are a big deal when you've pushed, your whole setup so far out of its efficiency range. So like you reference it lugging down the motor. I'm sure it does. I bet between like 40 and 75 is not super fun if it gets into overdrive. And Itza and Ninja are down here having a whole other conversation, I believe primarily about PSI in the cooling system while driving. If I caught that correctly, I have been trying to keep track while answering Ozzy's questions. I'm installing a GTX 3576R in your Tacoma. Dude, that sounds like it would be a pretty sweet setup. So here's the issue with why you don't really see ball bearing turbos and VGT systems, at least from hydraulically actuated turbos for the VGT setup. Ball bearings require low oil pressure. Journal bearings need high pressure, and VGT systems work well with high pressure. Will need high pressure to function correctly. So those two mix. I do not know how KC is doing their magic with their turbos in that, the ball bearing setup. The reason the 20 and newer Ford turbos can go ball bearing is that the VGT system is just an electronically actuated setup in that, which I think is pretty cool. I believe the Cummins also has a electronically actuated VGT setup in there as well. But that is one of the big reasons that the newer 6.7s can. Only the brand new ones. The older ones do not do that. So again, not sure how all that magic happens, but it does happen. See a turbo I'm not aware of them making. Oh, I bet this just has the thicker shaft. The Extreme. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'll get out of that. So anyway, guys, I think we're probably going to be down to about the last 7 minutes or so here of the stream. And Ninja, how did that go? Is that working nice for you? I definitely at some point want to upgrade my alternator on the 6.7 or not the 6.7, on the 6-liter. It has like 180 amp now. I'd like to go to at least 200 if someone's making it. There's a couple different ones out there I've seen, but I know the lease ones are really nice. So I could see me going with one of them in the near future, but that's kind of a ways down the road right now. Unless my alternator goes, then we'll be putting it down there. I want to put Hammer Down Motorsports. You guys all know I love Hammer Down. Yeah, I want to put a 6.7 in there. All you have to do is one of the bolt holes on the 6.7 is larger. Like the 6.4 bolts right up, no issues. The 6.7 bolts up, but you have to get like a spacer to fit inside that larger bolt hole, I believe is the issue. And then you're good to go. Which somebody on, I think it's eBay, has a kit to do it. Excuse me, which is kind of dumb because it's literally just a spacer with a nut or with a bolt. I forget. Yep, here it is. There is a guy that sells a spacer to go in. And then that's it. It does not look hard. Anyway, I'm getting very distracted now. Maybe it'll actually start like a 6.7. That would be pretty awesome if it started, like, if it genuinely started better. Like, I've heard people with the 6.4s, like, I think they start a little nicer, but I don't know that they necessarily, like, it's that much different. But if you could get one to start right up like that, it's got to help in the cold to have that 6.7 starter. My problem is I ended up buying a brand new starter for my 6 liter in the rebuild, so it's kind of hard to turn around and get a brand new one. But at some point, I do plan to put a 6.7 starter in it. Like I said, the 6.4 bolts right up. I'd love to do a video with somebody putting a 6.4 starter in with them, just for the video. And then my personal truck, I would personally like to go with a 6.7 starter and see how it goes. But I'm sure, I wonder how much a 6.7 starter is. Like an actual Ford one. Not that I need to get it from Ford, but just what can I? There's 6.7 starters that are $90. Just seems, I don't know. Just doesn't seem right to me. I don't trust a bunch of reman starters. I'd probably trust a used starter off of out of a junkyard though. Used starter. I wonder if the 2019 starters fit. I do think Ford changed that bolt strictly just to I feel like Ford changed that bolt just to stop people from doing that. uh in a shop did a vid with installing an amp draw comparison. Oh, Nate in the shop's a good dude. Or Nathan. I don't know what he prefers to go by, but he's a nice guy. I've talked to him. I might try out his map sensor he's running for his truck once I do my injectors and stuff. That could be kind of cool. I think it's a neat idea what he did. It'll tie in nicely with the other gauge I'm going to run anyway. So, uh, the 6.7 doesn't seem that bad. I'll figure out how to make it work because I don't think it's much more than just that one spacer. Let's see if in this kit if it says anything about I'm trying to see if they say anything about it. Does not work with manual transmissions. Or at least this guy's setup doesn't work with it. Well, it does not say. I don't think it's more than just the normal stuff. The Banks iDash is nice. I have looked at that for my 6.7, since I don't really have any gauges I want to add. I'm just looking it up now. The iDash would be a cool one to check out and do a review, compare the two. I do love my Edge CTS monitor that I'm running on my 6 liter. That'll definitely stay there, but well, I guess I need to take that out of the 6.7 and put over there at some point. But then I will need to upgrade something on my 6.7. One of the appealing things to the iDash is it'll fit in a regular pod. So maybe I can have something that looks like it actually just fits in the truck, whereas on the 6.7 there's no like dash mount for it. On my 6 liter there's a dash mount I can use, but on the 6.7 there isn't. Looking up, because if there's just a single dash pod I can install on my truck, I would definitely do that on the 6.7. It looks like there's something there. I don't have any pictures of it. That's a little... Oh, there's a picture of it. Oh, that actually is pretty clean. Yeah, that's definitely got to be what I do, because it just fits right on the arm there. It looks like you can actually fit two of them together if you wanted two pods. Yeah, you can. That looks cool, honestly. Even the two pod setup they have, it looks clean and out of the way. I don't need to monitor a ton of stuff, honestly, but two of those things would be about perfect for me on my 6.7. Well, now I need that. Steve's an expensive friend to have. He'll turn around and give you good ideas for your truck. Steve, do you have the banks in yours? So I didn't mess with the pedal monster. I messed with BD's setup, and what I found is, honestly, I ended up keeping it turned off most of the time. I don't really care for the throttle response things. Like, I'm not saying they're not cool. They do let you kind of like modify things. But I'm not like a diehard fan of the throttle boosters. They're cool. I don't have anything against them. I wouldn't give anyone a hard time for having one. I don't know that I'll ever have one again. BD sent me that when I did that review, is why I had it. And I did like how they did it. It was clean setup, and I could tuck it away and hide it really nice. I should have taken it out of my truck. I wish I had it on there, but I'm not going to buy it. But I should have just taken it out of the truck to put in this one then when I had it, because it is like the eco mode or something, or if you want, like, certain tunes will mess with your throttle response and increase it, and if you don't necessarily like it, or if you're driving in crappy weather and want to turn it down, it was nice for that, but it wasn't necessarily like a night and day difference in my opinion. Steve, do you have your pedal monster turned up, or do you leave yours? Like, I messed with it a lot in the beginning, and then I kind of pretty much turned it off. Like, kept it factory or something very mild after I ran it for a little bit. I guess if I was going to do another one, I would want it to be a different one to try. So I'd probably try the banks. Like I said, if I was going to do another one, but at this time I don't particularly have. Yeah, I wouldn't particularly go look for it. I do DCR. I do want the DCR pump. I do really want to do. At some point, I definitely plan to do it. I just need to kind of be a little more successful at YouTube before I do. On the 6.7, a couple things I'd like to do would be to mess with my fuel filters. And there's a relocation kit for the upper fuel filter. That would be nice to have. Then, yep, and there's Steve bringing it up. I actually learned about it from him. Pusher is on the to-do list. I'm just bringing all this stuff up in the background because I like looking at it. The pusher kit is, excuse me, is pretty sweet. I actually got to see one of these pusher kits in person recently for the first time, and they do really look just super nice. They seem to fit really well on top of it all, which I think is half the battle. When you get one of these to fit nice in the truck as well, like that's a big deal. A lot of the other kits, like they might fit okay. There's not a ton of room in these trucks, so nothing fits fantastic, but it is a touch on the expensive side for what you're getting for sure, but I do think overall it is completely worth it. It would be a really cool setup. Plus, it'll make other things easier, like when I go to change my exhaust manifold soon. That's another BD sponsored video, will be the exhaust manifolds I put on. That's gonna be a big video because the truck's gonna have to be down for a bit to get to all of them. That's not a video I'm actually looking forward to making, honestly, because it's gonna be such a hassle. Well, now that we have rattled off $5,000 in 6.7 upgrades, I don't know that's quite $5,000, but it is a lot that was just kind of rattled off there. But guys, I do think we are going to wrap up the live stream for today. I have another video I need to finish editing that I made with DSD parts, kind of just talking about some of the tools needed if you want to get started and working on your own stuff for some of the newer or younger subscribers to the channel. I'll probably do a revised one of this just by myself at some point, but a nice video we kind of did a while ago. I just haven't updated or edited it fully. And then I'm going to talk about my experience trying a tuner on the 6.7 and a cheap aftermarket air intake, and what a headache of an experience that has been. Everybody, thank you for your support. If you haven't already, subscribe. Don't forget to quick smash that like button before you exit the live stream, guys. I hope everybody has a good work week, and I'll see you soon.